I'm delighted to be here with Trevor Morris, writer, composer, and director of Butterfly on a Wheel. Trevor, I just have to ask you, this is such a heartful film. Where did this come from? And why did you want to give back so much to the world?
Yeah, hi, Suze. Good morning. Um, Great question. I know you know the story when we first met each other, but I was going through a very difficult time in my life. It was COVID. COVID was hard on everybody.
Mm.
So I'm not special that way, but for some reason with me, it really hit me hard with just this convergence of energies, and it set me into a tailspin for like a year of my life. I was really on my knees, and as I was pulling myself out of that, my spiritual counselor, who's like a therapist type guy, said, "Okay, I want you to start journaling. I hate journaling. I still hate it." And he said, "I want you to start at the beginning. Start it." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "What's your first good memory? Like, what's your first, go back to your childhood?" And right away, the first image that came to mind was me sitting in my grandmother's lap and her playing
Mm.
Puff the Magic Dragon on piano to me. My grandmother was a big woman for her era. She was probably 5'8", 5'9". She's a war wife, World War II wife. So she had big arms, you know what I mean? She could really wrap her arms around me. And it was a very safe, beautiful feeling. And she would sing it into my ear like it was a secret. And when you're 4 or 5 years old, those sort of impressions really, they really press into your soul. And that was the first memory I came up with. And it began my healing journey as a person and the exploration of this idea of music in my life, and certainly the idea of being quote unquote different, and what that meant. And, coming full circle to the idea that, when we're kids, we're told that if you're different, or if you're lucky like me, they call me special, which is a nicer way of saying the same thing. But if you're different, why can't you learn like everybody else? Why can't you sit still? Why can't you just do what everyone else is doing, which makes you feel like an outlier? I've been exploring this theme my whole life. Why am I different? And why is that bad? Because it certainly feels like, not something that's ever put into your soul as a kid as positive. And what you realize, the guy who couldn't sit still probably was destined to become a great dancer, or the person who didn't learn the same way as everybody else, learned a different way and went on to do great things with their life. And that is notion came the idea that your deficiencies are really your superpowers, that they are who you are and they make you who you are, but we're not taught to embrace them for whatever reason. And this movie is an exploration of that idea, embracing what makes you different, embracing the unique qualities of you, all your shortcomings, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and realizing that without those, you wouldn't be who you are, or worse, we'd all be the same. No one wants that. So that was the exploration of the movie as a healing journey for myself and exploring this question that I've had my entire life, really.
So the beauty of this character is he keeps overcoming challenges. He thinks he has a solution, he's not quite there yet. How do you face those? And how did you decide to create a character that showed us that overcoming challenges it's possible?
Well, it's just literally life's lessons learned the hard way, and that growth comes from. And I teach my kids this is picking up something heavy, metaphorically or physically, and carrying it, without an audience or anyone clapping for you. And when you do, you feel good about yourself. You feel like you've accomplished something, whether that be a career pursuit or a personal goal or getting in shape. Pick something. And so that's kind of that notion has stuck with me. And the idea of putting our character through, in this case, I wanted to not sensationalize, because he has OCD and anxiety and other things, to not sensationalize those things, but to show him alone, honestly, just trying to get out the door, just trying to make it through the day, and to make it difficult for him, with what's in his own way, which is sort of somewhat mental, somewhat physical in his case, and um, to watch him struggle just to get to school, get out the front door. And I think there's something about that that is universal, even if you don't have OCD, even if you don't have anxiety or ADHD, or you're not a musician. it's not important. I think that, and when you and I were talking about the script early days, we were talking about, my question was, is this universal? Will this resonate? And you were like, yeah, it will, man. It will, because even though the specifics are specific, the themes are really universal, which is whether we put something in our own way or something is physically in our way. Um, just sometimes getting through the day is a win, you know. And we wanted to show this guy, um, just getting from A to B, and then of course his journey is that he wants to play his music for other people and make a human connection, get the girl, and he gets close to those, and then of course it all kind of falls apart, and that gives our movie at the beginning, the middle, and the end that we had always hoped for.
Now, you brought to us these two characters, the brother, and then this beautiful, radiant female character,
Mm.
the potential partner. So where did those come from for you? And what made you choose to show us him interacting with other humans? I really appreciate that you showed his discomfort when he even greets, the Brielle character at the door. He's so tense. I love that because those are moments in all of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Who hasn't been on a first date? I don't care how, how together you think you are when you're nervous, but to the other two characters, the reason they exist, the brother, I don't have a brother, but he's modeled after a cousin kind of guy who was very genetically gifted in terms of his looks, in terms of his body. He just had that kind of natural Adonis, what we think of as a man. You know, he got all the girls easily. You know, he just had that ride in life. It's like a beautiful woman. You know, some women are just gifted with the sort of beauty that stops a room in their tracks, and that's how they wade through the world. They didn't deserve it, but that's how it goes. And so, Dylan, the brother, the idea for him is a counterbalance to Jacen, because Jacen, everything's a struggle, you know, and he's actually a good-looking kid, but he maybe doesn't see himself that way, or has trouble meeting the girls, or has trouble in his case expressing himself musically. Whereas the brother, everything came easy, it was like, and as a counterbalance to the two of them, Dylan seems like kind of almost, I wouldn't say comic relief, that's a bit of a strong term, but he's jovial and lighter, and he can poke fun at his brother, because they've known each other forever. And in the end, the brother gets a chance to say something. Dylan gets to say something to his baby brother, which is cool.
Yeah, I think that's a very special moment because it shows growth for both brothers. Even the gorgeous guy where it all came easy, you have this moment where he's struggling and he has such great respect. And I love that, seeing respect for the child that's different and saying, hey, you taught me. Like I've watched you and I have so much respect for you. I'm going to get choked up now. Having that moment where everybody is learning. And also you have compassion for this good looking guy. You realize, oh, it probably hasn't all been so easy for him either, right? There isn't anybody that doesn't go through this. So I wanted to ask you too, if the movie were to continue, do you think the love affair would happen? What would you see?
I don't know. I don't have the answer, and I don't want to have the answer. Certainly we're left with the idea that the hope is that, um, you know, Jacen is seen in quotations by Brielle. Sorrel isn't a character's name, and that it's not a nice romantic bow on the end and everything's beautiful. It's just we're left with possibility is the word that I've always used. That there's a possibility that it could work out. Or, I said to you, that I know the romantic in you, Suze, is like, who doesn't want a second chance at first love? The one that got away, and we sort of, there's a little bit of that in there too. But, you know, Brielle, the actress who we had difficulty casting, if you recall, we were less than 2 weeks from shooting and we didn't have that role yet. And we had a couple of candidates, and you kept saying to me, "This girl would be great." I'm like, no, it's not quite. She's not quite right. And you're like, "Well, why?" And I don't know why. And my instinct was, what I knew is I needed a female, again, counterpoint who lives her life authentically, unabashedly, out loud, on her sleeve, says what she feels. She has a freedom to her. And Brielle, the human being, I met on Zoom. I cast her in 12 minutes or something. So I went,
Mhm.
that's
I
her.
remember it was instant. You're like, this is it.
This is it. Because she immediately felt like that. Like her acting is incredible, but it's really not that far from who she really is in an honest moment. But what it does in a romantic sense is it gives Jacen something to look at and goes, in his mind, wow, look how free she is. Look how I met her. Then she invites herself over for dinner and she's just out there. And
Right.
he
She
just,
goes for it.
and he wants so badly to be like that. And she recognizes that in him and says, I think you just put yourself out there because she just sees only the good side of him. And of course, these things shake him to his core and trigger him and touch every nerve he has. And of course, he ends up kind of hitting a rock bottom moment, which is the metaphor for where I was, and then goes on a healing journey to pull himself out of that. What is kind of a rock bottom for him in his life. In the scene, in the date scene, spoiler alerts, I guess, we're rooting for him, man. He got her in the front door, didn't he? He didn't not show. He did it, and it's going okay, and it's going well, and then he's just at the finish line of them connecting, and then of course he is unable to, and which is incredibly painful, I think, to watch, and a metaphor for the human condition that we all, I don't know why we're good at this, but we all get in our own way a lot. And that's a moment I think we can all see ourselves in at some point in our lives.
And I love that moment and the importance of just how difficult it is. And then, of course, what's amazing that you've done with this character is you pull him out, or he pulls himself out.
He
And
pulls
to me,
himself
that's
out.
the magic of this film compared to other films about people with issues, is you have this positive sense of life. So I would love you to address how you personally look at manifestation and then how you imbued this character with that same kind of, he's in despair and it's rough, but he does not quit. And the reason to me, he's where he is in the end is because he does not quit. He doesn't have an answer. He doesn't know. All he knows is what has not worked, but he's ready to move forward. And
Mm.
knowing you now, I know that's you. So
Well,
tell us, how do you
it's
how do you
it's
do
everything
that?
you just described, but to an extreme, which is, in a strange way, I'll use the word emboldened, but he, you know, the line he says in voiceover, which I stole from my spiritual counselor, who was at the premiere, he laughed out loud. Um, the truth that I learned
Mm,
when I was in that moment is that the hard truth is that real change only happens. I mean, I'm talking like I need to change. I need to like what is no longer working. What you said. You only really change when it's so bad being where you are that you can't take it anymore. It could be in a relationship, it could be with a lover, a parent, a sibling, a work relationship, whatever. The kind of profound change that I went through was just that the pain was so bad that I'm like, I just I gotta do something. I have to. I can't stand being like this any longer. And in the context of a short film where we only had 2.5 minutes to show this healing journey, that's what he does is he makes a stand for himself,
mm,
and says, I got to go away. And his brother's like, where? For how long? He's like, I don't know.
mm,
It was an unknown destination, but he just knew that he just didn't want to be that way anymore. He didn't want to not get the girl. He didn't, he wanted to go on this deep healing journey. For how long he goes, we don't know. A few months, something like that. For me, I went to Costa Rica on a dusty bus
mhm.
by myself and did my version of this. But that's the truth, is the hard truth, and it hurts. Is that when you're in a relationship you shouldn't be in, or whether it's toxic, or whether it's a parental thing, or a work relationship, or a relationship with yourself, which is in his case or my case, that you only really change when the pain of being who you are is so bad
Mm.
that you have to do that. So that's the hard truth that he faces and goes on this journey and finds the light in himself. And then ultimately, of course, again, in the context of 33-minute film, he ends up playing his music live. Not only that, he gets to play with sort of the elder statesmen of the jazz community, who are like the, you know, These are the
Yeah.
super pros, and like, hey, welcome, kid, welcome to the big leagues.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the unforeseen thing is he gets seen for himself as a musician because he gets applauded. Whereas before he could only play to an empty concert hall. That was the most he could muster. He got over, he changed, in a profound way, and is seen by, Sorrel, the love interest. So, it's what I like about our movie that I think is different than most shorts, and not a criticism, but just an observation, is a lot of shorts deal with very difficult subject matter. So does ours.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, grief and famine and strife and racial inequality and all sorts of terrible things.
Mhm.
And I get it. The world's full of terrible things, and those are truly heartfelt stories. Ours deals with something difficult, but the hope is to leave you a little bit like uplifted, a little bit like, again, not a nice bow, not everything's perfect, but like, wow, if you put in the work and you pick up the heavy thing and you carry it, which we all have something we need to carry, that maybe, just maybe, it might get better. Life might get brighter, it
Mhm.
might get sunnier when it does for our character. And that, you know, resonance coupled with our actress sticking the landing, holy moly,
Mhm.
right? Ooh. So that was the hope, and I think we accomplished it. And it was funny, as you know, you were on set. The take with our actress, when she cries, all the battle hardened film crew guys with the gaffer tape and the walkie talkies, and those guys, they're impenetrable. All those guys cried on set too, so we knew we had something special in that performance, which I'm entirely grateful for. One take, the only take she ever did, by the way. So, you know, that's the sort of resonance that we got out of the actors, which I'm totally grateful for, of course. And that and the music and the whole thing is, I wanted to leave with the idea that it's, at least for our character, it's possible that he could live his life the way he wants to. And I want to express my gratitude to you. Of course, you were there from the very beginning and working on the script, and me encouraging me to make the script as personal as possible, which is not an easy ask, by the way. It's like, so take everything that's all your secrets and put them on the screen for everyone to see. But we both learned, that uh, that which is most personal is most universal. At least that's what, when we screen it in person with audiences and you get a chance to have real reactions with people, they say, I see myself in him, or I see my son in him, or there's something about him that I can relate to, even though they're not musicians, I don't have OCD. That the human condition, put it this way, if there is one human condition that binds us all, is the desire to be seen for who we really are, right? We all want that. Who doesn't want that? And what is in the way of that, whatever that is what we're exploring, and the idea that that journey is worth it.